Hi everyone, strap in for a doozy. To give some much-needed context to this situation, I, 27-year-old male, met my now wife, 27-year-old female, via a dating app in late 2015. We spoke for a month before meeting in person for the first time, where I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes, and we were long distance for 3 years before moving in together in 2018. I moved away from my family and friends, and we found a house in the same town she was already living in. I proposed the following year, and then we got married in 2020. We then started trying for a baby. It took some time, and the pregnancy was very rough for my wife and ended up being a cesarean section. Our son was born in October 2021 and is now nearly 3 years old. This is where things get complicated. Leading up to our wedding, one of the bridesmaid's sisters had a boyfriend who came to the wedding as their plus one. My wife ended up becoming friends with said boyfriend. A few months after we had gotten married, they were getting closer and people started to comment on it. Not wanting to be an overbearing, jealous husband, I just passed it off as people of different genders can just be friends, right? Some more context on what I think drew them together is that my wife and I are very introverted people, with her being slightly more outgoing. I prefer to stay home rather than go out, and on my part, I may have not been putting in enough effort in organizing dates outside of the house. My impression at the time was that we enjoyed doing things at home, and now she had a friend to go do outdoor things with. They got closer over time and were best friends during the time we were trying for a baby. People would keep commenting, and I would brush it off to try and be supportive of her having a close friend, as she had in the past struggled to make friends, which I could relate to. They clashed quite a lot, and I would often be a shoulder to cry on. At one point, they stopped being friends altogether, and given how upset she was, it seemed almost like a breakup. They became friends again, and one night, while they were out together, I saw she had not logged out of Facebook and stupidly decided to snoop on their messages. It revealed he was in love with her and that she had developed feelings too, but was not acting on them because of me. I confronted her about this, and she said he had confessed before and she had turned him down, causing them to stop being friends. However, they had become friends again on the understanding that it would be just friends, but she too then developed feelings. I wanted to trust her, so I left it at that. Come October 2021, close to Halloween, our son had been born, and my work was going out for a few drinks after we did a quiz in the office. We ended up meeting with my wife, my sister-in-law, the best friend, and a few others. Despite my usual dislike for places like clubs, I somehow was there. The mix of alcohol and the whispers of colleagues and friends in my ear about how the best friend was being too close with my wife stoked up a rage in me. This came to a head when my friends and colleagues were making an effort to split my wife and the best friend up and to bring my wife and me together. This upset the best friend, and he was going to leave the club. My wife followed him, and one more comment about how I should go after her too, because it wasn't right, set my rage over the edge. I went down and saw them sitting on a sofa embracing in a goodbye, which, to my angry drunk mind, was too much. I told the best friend it was time to leave, and he got up, and then I punched him in the face. We got separated by the club staff, and I left the club very quickly and walked all the way home, suddenly very sober. The next few days revealed more of their relationship. My wife convinced him not to call the police on me, and she was up in the air about leaving me because my punching of him put into question how safe I was as a person. Mind you, I had never punched anyone before, and I hate confrontation, as you'll see more in this post. She revealed that while they had not engaged in full-on intimacy, they had been intimate in other ways, but had stopped once she was heavily pregnant with our son. She had been feeling guilty for a while, and they had not resumed what they were doing once our son was born. She had said that she had been unfaithful and that the trust was gone. I wanted to stay together and rebuild our trust because I still very much loved her and wanted my son to have a family that was whole. We talked it out and agreed to stay together, and that she would go back to being actual friends with the best friend, who, during all this was trying to convince her to leave me and be with him instead. This was not plausible anyway, as he lived with his parents and currently had no job, so he could not provide for anyone. A few days after the whole ordeal, my wife, him and I all had a conversation, and he presented her with an ultimatum: him or me. My wife is notorious for being terrible at communication. It can be very difficult to get any kind of response out of her. She just wants you to do all the talking and figure out what you want. But the best friend wanted to hear it from her specifically: him or me. We sat and waited for a while in silence. She chose me in silence, but he wanted her to say it out loud that she was done with him romantically, and she eventually did. And I thought that was the end of it. The best friend and I shared a weird hug. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe some subconscious apology to me for how he had come into our lives and turned it all upside down. Despite my wife saying she was done with him romantically, they remained friends, but not for long. My wife felt continuously guilty because she would occasionally slip up and kiss him. Me, being the dolt I am, excused these mess-ups for the sake of trying to keep our relationship intact and our family whole. A few months after this, she broached the subject of an open relationship, a way she could have all she wanted with none of the guilt or consequences. I could see she was struggling. We were both very tired from looking after a baby, and she had suffered very hard with postnatal depression and had suffered from depression at the start of our relationship and prior. She had gotten a lot better and was off her medication by the time we were engaged and getting married. But the pregnancy, plus this whole weird love triangle, had brought her right back. So being the idiot I was, I agreed to an open relationship to make her happy. This open relationship lasted until around April of this year. She was happy having her family life with husband and child with me, and then her outgoing fun part of life with the best friend. I did not see any other woman during this, as I was committed to my wife, even if she wasn't fully committed to me. My main reasoning for sticking this out was mostly for the sake of my son. I wanted him to have a proper family, and I just wanted a simple family life. The other part was fear or shame. If I left, it would all come out, and everyone would know. I have a good relationship with my in-laws, and my family is currently planning to move down to where we are because they want to spend more time with my son. If I leave, it will ruin so many relationships, and I fear the blame will be on me for not stopping it sooner. So I soldiered on, even though I was miserable most of the time. I did it for my son and my family so that they might be happy, and seeing them happy would help me forget, or at least block it out. So during this whole open relationship, while our side was fine, we had family trips and holidays, and my wife and I were still able to be intimate with each other in the very rare times that our child allowed us to be. She wasted no time having intimacy with the best friend. They would go out in the evenings a few times a week, and sometimes away for weekends together. He did not like hearing my name even being mentioned, so when they were together, I am sure they pretended like I didn't exist. They had even taken our son for day trips to farms and soft play when I was working, and that is one of the few times I had the guts to say something and say that he was my son and that the family stuff should remain with the actual family. Myself hearing his name was quite the opposite. Whenever they fought or had some kind of disagreement, I was the shoulder to cry on and the empathetic listener, as any suggestions fell on deaf ears. Whenever I felt close to caving and leaving, my son would float into my mind, and it would stop me every time. In April, this all came to a head. She had said they'd been fighting more and more. He was spending more time on his phone when he was with her, and this resulted in her half-heartedly breaking up with him to try and rouse something out of him. But he took her at her word and broke up with her. She backpedaled and tried getting him back, but he ended up going no contact with her. She was inconsolable for weeks, and I was there as always to pick up the pieces. While she was physically ill and crying, I and her parents looked after my son. She attempted a few more times to reach out to him, and each time this relapsed her progress in getting over him. She even tried to go back to being just friends, but either he couldn't do that or didn't want to. They had met a few times with my son, as some kind of intermediary to force them to not be intimate if such a feeling arose. But after that, he said he couldn't be just friends and fully cut her off again, and she blocked him on everything. I finally felt some sense of relief, like my efforts had been rewarded somehow, that by staying, I now finally had my family back and we could all move on and my life would finally be normal again. Now it is almost September. To take her mind off of him, she has gotten into writing spiritual journals and has also started her own business. She was in childcare before going full stay-at-home mom, but she is now using her qualifications from childcare for her own business, and it has been doing very well. I've been very supportive and even helped with purchasing a domain, setting up emails, and a website. My issue now is I don't think she loves me the same anymore. The last time she and the best friend were intimate was when she was very emotionally vulnerable, and going off what she said, he took advantage of this, and they had intimacy before he then dumped her. This had a factor in her being physically ill, but she wanted to be intimate with me again so that the last time she had intimacy wasn't that time, which understandably was traumatic for her. She took the time she needed, and we were intimate again. After a few more times of being intimate, she said she didn't want to have intimacy anymore and used one of her mom friends as an example, saying, X and Y don't have intimacy. It wasn't like we had the chance to be intimate very often, but I always tried to initiate when I thought the time was right, but no became the answer going forward. I was told intimacy isn't the whole relationship, and I understood that, but I had communicated that intimacy was part of how I showed love. We have not had intimacy since, and I cannot get anything more from her than cuddling and a peck on the lips type of kiss. I was feeling insecure because of this and tried to discuss it with her, that I felt unhappy and unsure about where we were in the relationship. She said that things were fine and we were staying together for our son. I said it was more than that for me because I still loved her the same. She asked if I wanted to split up, and I asked her if she loved me, and she said she did, but as usual, my heart was not in it. I couldn't commit to what would be the harder decision of leaving and decided to stay. I fear she is staying because it's the easy option or because she has no choice since her other option left her. She may be hopeful that the best friend will return to her life and then she will leave me. I asked her if he came back, would she leave me for him? And she said she didn't know. It would depend on the situation at the time. I made my stance clear that if he came back in any form, I was done and would leave. Now, I am still feeling just as stuck or trapped as I felt during the open relationship. I am a good husband and father. I stuck with her during her difficult pregnancy. I went to all the scans and appointments post-birth, and I've been actively involved with raising my son. I work Monday to Friday, but I take over in the evenings before he goes to bed. I cook most of the time, and when she does cook, it's normally just freezer meals, while I'm making meals from scratch with fresh ingredients. Her main gripe, which drove her to the best friend originally, was that we never went on dates outside of the house, but she never expressed this to me, so how could I have known? I said that she should have told me, and I could have done something, not gone and slept with someone else and had a whole weird love triangle thing. I am actively trying to put more effort into dates. A lot is going on, so we don't really have a lot of time for date nights out on a whim because we need to organize childcare. I know that wasn't the case before we had a kid, but again, it wasn't communicated to me. And us both being introverted, I thought we were perfectly good at home. Infection 19 lockdowns may not have helped too, but I had attempted a few dates after lockdowns were clear. I feel like now anything I do is just going to be a comparison to the best friend, like I'm only doing it because they were doing it together. Even after everything, I still love my wife. I don't know if it is the same way anymore. I'm actively trying to put in effort, but I don't think it's being returned, and everything I try to express leads to us not getting anywhere and just continuing on. She has never wanted to be the one to make decisions. She's let this whole thing play out, and it took the best friend making the decision himself for their relationship to end. Does it have to be me that makes the decision here? If I leave, where do either of us go? Where does my son go? and how much more will Chmore wange or be ruined as a result of my choice? I've had no one to turn to, and I've tossed this whole thing around in my mind for the past few years, thinking, why is it down to me to do this? I let the open relationship happen to avoid consequences and to keep everyone but myself happy, and I'm still doing it now. Can I be happy again, truly happy with my family, if I continue to stick it out and put the effort in? Will my wife see me and love me how she used to, or is she too hung up still on the best friend and is waiting for him to come back so she can leave me, or so I am forced to leave? My priority is my son. I want what's best for him, and I've been content in my misery to be able to see him as much as I do. If I leave, I may not get to see him as much. I currently only see him after I finish work and on the weekends. I love my wife, and I want her to be happy, but have I sacrificed my feelings for others too much? Is this the one time I've got to put myself first and leave? If you've made it this far, thank you. I hope it makes sense. I am very stuck and lost and many other things, and I need some help. I've put off asking for it for too long, either to save myself from a truth I don't want to hear or to spare my family and friends from all of this. Now for an update. To summarize, my wife and I have been together for 8 years. We have a child, but there was a whole affair / open relationship that happened, and I feel stuck and unsure how to feel or how to move forward in the marriage. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. No matter how hard you try, you can't be a big enough doormat to turn a bad relationship into a good one. Every time you put her first, you're just telling her that no matter how bad she treats you, you aren't going anywhere. Please seek professional help. If they could help you in locating even the smallest bit of self-respect, I think it could make a lot of difference. By the way, you did get a paternity test for your child, right? Comment 2. Bro, get out of this. It's very hard to come back from opening a marriage and everything you've already been through. I understand the situation with your child, but I know you can make it work. At some point, he'll start to see and feel the misery. You don't want that for him either. Now, for the update. I'm not sure if this is allowed, but I'm giving an update in case someone else is in the same boat as me. A lot has happened since my last update. Before I get into that, I want to clarify that I didn't respond to the best friend's email. I didn't want to know anything else at the time. I also want to say that I appreciate everyone who took the time to comment on my last post. I read through all of them and took some of your advice. About a week after my last update, I got a text from my wife about a family gathering at her parents' house for Easter. I wasn't exactly looking forward to it, but I agreed to go. I thought it might be a good chance to talk to her and improve our connection. I also thought it would be good for our son to spend time with his grandparents and cousins. I was still holding on to some hope that we could work things out for the sake of our family. On the night before Easter, I noticed my wife's phone buzzing constantly on the table. I was trying to play with our son, and she kept silencing it. At one point, I asked her who was texting her so much, but she ignored me. I didn't want to push it, so I just let it go. The next day, we went to her parents' house for Easter dinner. The atmosphere was really forced. Everyone was trying to act normal, but it was obvious that we were all feeling a little off. My wife seemed distracted the entire time, and she kept stepping outside to take calls. I tried to engage her in conversation about our son, but she was preoccupied. It was like I was talking to a wall. During dinner, my mother-in-law brought up the best friend. She mentioned how the best friend had been asking about the family. I felt uncomfortable as soon as she said that. It made things awkward. My wife just brushed it off casually, saying something like, "Oh, she's just being nosy." After dinner, my brother-in-law jokingly asked when we were going to have another child. It led to an awkward silence. My wife giggled nervously and said, "Not anytime soon," but didn't explain why. Later, I overheard my wife arguing with her sister on the porch. She kept saying something about needing space. I tried to approach them, but they stopped talking as I got closer. I felt confused and frustrated. Tension kept building throughout the evening. At one point, I offered to help clean up after dinner, but my wife snapped at me to relax. I decided to take our son for a walk around the block to cool off. While we were walking, I spotted my wife's car parked at a nearby coffee shop with someone leaning against it. As we got closer, I squinted and realized it was the best friend. It made me feel sick. After returning home, I confronted my wife about the coffee shop. She brushed it off as a coincidence and said she was just getting coffee. Things escalated when I found a half-opened message on her phone that mentioned meeting someone for coffee. We got into a huge argument, and she accused me of invading her privacy. That only made me more frustrated. The next day, I decided to take our son to a local park to clear my mind. At the park, I ran into a friend who mentioned seeing my wife and the best friend together at the coffee shop. I returned home, ready to confront my wife again, but she was already packing a bag. She claimed she needed time away to think and suggested I take care of our son while she was gone. I was still trying to process everything. While I was alone with our son, I received an email from the best friend. It suggested that we needed to talk. I didn't want to respond, so I focused on our son and tried to keep things normal. The next day, my wife returned unexpectedly, clearly upset and exhausted. She revealed that she met the best friend to talk about their relationship. She told me everything got worse from there. She mentioned considering moving out temporarily to figure things out. That left me in shock. The following week, I received a call from my wife saying she was moving in with her sister for a little while. She insisted this is not a breakup, but a chance for both of us to think. As she packed her things, I watched our son play, feeling the weight of the situation. Our son asked me where mom was, and I had to explain that she was gone for a bit. I wasn't sure how to frame it. That's where I'm at now. To answer a few questions, my wife is currently living with her sister in the same city. Our son is not aware of the full situation, just that his mom is temporarily away. We are trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in his routine, though it's been challenging for both of us. Am I the idiot for asking my wife to turn off the TV so I can sleep in my own bed? So this is a pretty frequent occurrence where I, a 31-year-old male, go to bed later than my wife, a 31-year-old female, because she likes to have the TV loud when she's trying to go to bed, and I like it quiet. I don't like the light and don't like conversations going on when I'm trying to go to bed because I'll fixate on them and not be able to go to sleep. I wear a face mask and earplugs, but the TV volume she likes is just too loud. So that's not really the problem. The problem is that she'll fall asleep laying diagonally across the bed, so there's nowhere for me to sleep. So when she does this, I usually wake her up so she moves over. Well, she's been working a lot of hours lately, and she blew up on me and told me I can sleep in the other room or sleep on the couch. We have a king-size mattress in our room, and our spare room has a twin bed. I can't sleep at all on that bed. She basically told me, when she's working all those extra hours, I just need to deal with it, and our relationship won't be 50-50 during those times. I just feel like this is a poor way to deal with things. She's basically overworking herself at work for no overtime and no credit, and I have to do every single household chore and also not get any sleep because she says she has a hard time going back to bed. Well, if she doesn't work herself into a rage, she almost never seems to have a hard time falling back asleep. She stormed off and locked herself in the other room and said she's going to sleep in there for the next 3 weeks because I don't get it. Sleep is just one of those things I've never really been willing to sacrifice, and she obviously thinks it's important too. I have no idea why she ever even lays down in a position which blocks the whole bed. It just seems incredibly selfish to me, and she never had a good reason for it. Besides, I didn't do it intentionally. I also work hybrid, so I have days where I work from home. She says I can just take naps during the workday. I'm not usually super busy, but I do have to be available if anyone needs my time, and I feel like she just undervalues my work and job because I choose a job where I have a work-life balance. She's a workaholic, and I wish she'd just realize it's not worth it if it's putting a strain on literally every other aspect of her life. The following morning, she follows up and was expecting an apology from me. I don't feel like I did anything wrong and cannot give an honest apology for something I feel like, at best, we both did things wrong. She says since I won't apologize, she is going to move into the other room for the next 3 weeks and that she'll handle dinner for herself moving forward. I just feel like she emotionally blackmails me and bullies me into apologizing and feeling like an idiot pretty often, and I'm kind of over it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Honestly, it's not unheard of for couples to sleep in separate rooms. My mom and her long-term live-in significant other have slept in separate rooms for like the last 20 years. They both have atrocious sleep apnea. He goes to bed at 8 and she likes the television on. This works for them. Comment 2. She sleeps with the television loud and the lights on, and intentionally diagonally across the bed. Quite honestly, this sounds intentional, like she's doing literally everything she can to keep you from sleeping in the same bed as her. Has she always been like this? Now, for the update. I'm sitting here trying to find words to describe what the last few days have been like. It's been almost 2 days since the argument about the bed situation. I can't even call it an argument. It was more like a shouting match, and it left me feeling drained. The wife has been sleeping in the spare room, which is uncomfortable for her, but she insists it's necessary. She can't stand having me in the same room, I guess. She says it's her space to unwind after work, and I shouldn't be so selfish. Just like she's been selfish with the bed, but whatever. The spare room has this really creaky bed that makes noise every time you move. I guess she's finding that out the hard way. Normally, I'd be a bit sympathetic, but right now, I'm just not in the mood. I've been handling all the household chores alone, and it's really piling up. I'm talking about the kind of chore load that makes you question your life choices. The laundry, the dishes, the vacuuming, you name it, I'm doing it. She hasn't so much as lifted a finger to help. I've noticed that she hasn't even been cooking for herself. She's just locking herself in that spare room, refusing to come out. I get it, she's tired from work, but so am I. I decided to prepare a simple dinner for us both, hoping to ease the tension. Nothing fancy, just some chicken, stir-fry, and rice. Easy to make and even easier to clean up. When I knocked on her door to invite her to eat, she refused and told me to leave her alone. I get the frustration, but damn. I left the dinner on the table, hoping she might change her mind. She didn't. The next morning, I found the dinner untouched, which just frustrated me more. You'd think after 2 days, she'd at least acknowledge my effort. I texted her during the day, asking if we could talk when she got home. She responded with a simple, "We'll see," which honestly felt really dismissive. I was hoping for something a bit more engaging. At work, I couldn't focus on anything. All I could replay in my mind was the argument from the other day. It was like a podcast on repeat, but without the good content. I decided to take a step back and let her have her space for the day. That evening, she came home late from work, looking like she'd been run over by a truck. I offered her a drink, but she ignored me completely and went straight to the bedroom. I followed her in, trying to engage in conversation, but she shut me down quicker than I could say, "Let's talk." I mentioned the dishes piled up in the sink, which sparked another argument. Not the kind of conversation I was hoping for, but whatever. She accused me of nagging and not understanding how hard her job is. I get it. Her job is hard. But I've been doing all the chores while she isolates herself. Is that really fair? She threw her hands up and said I never appreciated her efforts. Well, what efforts? She hasn't done anything. I decided to leave the room, feeling the frustration build. It was like a pressure cooker, just waiting to blow. The following day, I planned to talk to her again, hoping to settle things. I took her favorite snacks from the store, thinking it might lighten the mood. Nothing like a little junk food to make everything better, right? When I presented the snacks, she barely acknowledged them and returned to the bedroom. I was left standing there, like an idiot, holding a bag of chips. Feeling defeated, I took the snacks back and put them away. That weekend, we were invited to a family barbecue at my parents' house. I hoped this would be a way to reconnect and take our minds off all the crap going on between us. At the barbecue, my parents asked about our home life, which made me feel uneasy. I tried to steer the conversation away, but she brought it up, mentioning their new arrangement. My parents exchanged concerned looks, and I could feel the judgment. It was like they were silently asking me what the hell was going on. After the barbecue, she seemed more distant, and I felt the gap widen. It's like we're living in two different worlds now. I decided to confront her about her behavior at the barbecue. She snapped back, saying she was tired of pretending everything was fine. I suggested we seek help together, but she wasn't receptive to the idea. On Monday, I found out she's been working late shifts consistently, which explains her exhaustion. I learned from a coworker that she's been under a lot of pressure at work with a recent project. Knowing that made me feel a bit guilty for complaining about her being tired all the time. I finally mustered the courage to directly ask her about her workload. We ended up having a long talk about our expectations at home. It's about time we did. We agreed to communicate better about our needs and support each other. It's honestly what we should have been doing from the start. By the end of the week, we decided to establish a bedtime routine that worked for both of us. We also committed to alternating cooking nights to share responsibilities. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but it feels like there's a tiny glimmer of hope peeking through the clouds. After all the shouting, the silence, and the epic levels of avoidance, we finally sat down and talked. I mean, really talked. And yeah, it took a while to get here, but we figured out a plan to actually support each other instead of living in our own little isolated worlds. I know it's just a baby step, but hey, every journey starts somewhere, right? Wish me luck. To answer a few questions, we decided to try couples therapy after everything. We both realized we needed an objective third party to help us communicate better. The therapy sessions have been challenging but productive. We're learning to navigate our individual struggles without neglecting each other. And it's been a healing process. Am I the idiot for telling my overbearing parents to back off and let me live my own life? I am a 34-year-old woman who was raised by two parents, a 71-year-old father and a 73-year-old mother, who, while they are well-meaning, have a tendency to be a bit controlling. I also have a younger sister who is 31 years old. I'm struggling to understand if their involvement in my life is inappropriate or not. I could use some insight. I was raised very Catholic, attending an all-girls private school. I've since left the Catholic Church, as I had largely negative experiences and have issues with some of the Catholic Church's involvement in politics. So I no longer associate with that church, despite the fact that it dominated pretty much every aspect of my childhood and identity growing up. My parents accept my opinion, but they also frequently try to reconvert me. I went to college after high school, and I graduated in 3 years. After college, I moved back home, and I immediately began to apply to graduate school. But my parents charged me rent to live in my childhood bedroom. I was 20 years old, and this was shortly after the 2008 economic collapse, so jobs were scarce, but I tried my best. I took out substantial loans to pay my parents and attend graduate school. Fortunately, I chose a good field and got a good job after graduating, so I now make well into 6 figures. I paid off my student loans within 3 years of graduating in 2014 and bought my own home shortly after. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, but my parents still treat me as if I'm a child. Lately, I've realized my parents have a suspicious level of awareness about my comings and goings and activities in my own home. I live about 15 minutes away from them and see them probably 1 to 2 times a month. When I first moved into my home, which I bought with my own money, my father took my only spare key and said it was his right to have it. That made me feel a little weird, because while I'm his daughter, I'm not his property. And this home is my own, that I bought with my own self-earned money. A few years later, he bought me a Ring doorbell, and since then, he's made occasional comments, suggesting that he knows who comes to my front door. I feel like he might have access to the video from my doorbell. Recently, I got a pet cam to monitor my cats from home, and he requested access to it from his phone, but I don't want to feel constantly monitored by my father, as a 34-year-old woman who provides for herself completely. So I denied his access. Is this okay behavior from a parent of an adult child? My parents were also very controlling when I lived with them during graduate school in my 20s, giving me a curfew and monitoring my every move. My younger sister is different from me in that she lets my parents pay for everything. but also lets them control her every movement. I don't want the same thing. I want independence, but I also want a decent relationship with my family. I struggle with that. Now, I'm trying to move a couple of states away, but my dad wants to offer me a small sum of money so that he can help me. However, I also feel he's only doing it so that he can have partial ownership of my home and control me. I feel weird about that, but I'm conflicted. I do have friends whose parents have helped them financially with home ownership. I'm grateful for my parents' offer of help, but I want independence. How do I handle this? To add, I should mention that my dad helped me install my Ring doorbell, but I activated the account myself. I just checked to see if there are other devices on it and saw 2 I didn't recognize. They could possibly have been old phones that I used to have. I removed them anyway. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You have been completely infantilized. Do you really think the rest of us have our parents up our behinds at this age? You're 34. I have a coworker like you. She's nearly a baby the way she talks about how her parents tell her what to do. If you had children, would they be raising them also? Cut the damn umbilical cord, that's what you do. If you're financially stable, inform your parents of your plans and move on. It's that simple. They're in their 70s. If it comes down to it, I bet you can take them. Edit to add, he's obviously looking at the Ring camera. Remove it and get your own. That's just on principle. Comment 2. This is not normal. Your dad is definitely spying on you. When you do move, don't accept any help. After they visit the first time, have all the locks changed and change the password to your Wi-Fi and anything they may have ever had access to. Also, stop sharing all your business with them. I would ask them what the hell is wrong with them that they think they have the right to be all up in your business. I would also tell them that they are done raising me and have been done for many years. Geez. Now, for the update. It's been just over a month since I posted about my struggles with my parents, and honestly, I'm still trying to figure out this whole mess. My dad's offer for financial help to move out of state still hangs over me, and I just can't shake off the feeling that it's all part of his plan to keep controlling my life. I've been busy packing up my apartment while preparing for grad school, which is probably the only thing keeping me sane right now. One afternoon, I was packing like crazy, and I found my dad at my place unannounced. Like, how does he even have a key? He said he wanted to help me organize things before I move. I wanted to scream, "No thanks, I got this." But my voice wouldn't agree with me. So there I was, stuck with him in my tiny apartment. While we were packing, he found this old photo album and started flipping through it, reminiscing about my childhood. I noticed he paused on a photo of me at my first communion, a moment he seemed to cherish. I mean, who doesn't love looking at themselves in awkward childhood photos, right? I tried to change the conversation, but he kept talking about how much family means. I could feel the weight of those words hanging over me. Later that night, I got this text from him asking if he could come over again to help. I reluctantly agreed because, honestly, I just wanted this whole moving out thing over with, even if it meant spending more time with my dad. During his visit, he brought a box of items from my childhood that I had long forgotten. I mean, there were things in there that I didn't even remember owning. He started pointing out all these sentimental items and insisted on keeping family traditions alive. I mentioned my desire to create my own traditions now that I was an adult, and let's just say he didn't respond well to that. He started suggesting I reconsider my move, like he had some sort of magical power to make me change my mind. It's like he thinks he's the king, and I'm just a peasant that lives in his kingdom. The next day, I decided to take a break from packing and went to visit my sister Kate. I needed to vent and just have a normal conversation with someone who wasn't trying to control my life. While we were chatting, Kate mentioned that our parents were planning a family dinner to celebrate my upcoming move. I wasn't really in the mood for a celebration, but I figured I'd show up and eat some food. At the dinner, my parents gave a toast, focusing on how proud they were of me. My dad made this comment about how he would miss having me close by, and I could feel the pressure mounting. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside and asked if I had thought more about his financial offer. I told him I appreciated it, but wanted to do this on my own. He reacted by sharing how he had saved money for my education and wanted to help me. Like, great, but I don't need your money to prove that I'm living my own life, you know? A few days later, I got a call from Kate, who sounded anxious. She revealed that our parents were planning to visit me without telling me, which made me want to pull my hair out. I confronted my parents about their plans, feeling it was intrusive and overstepping their boundaries as parents of an adult. They insisted it was just a gesture of love and support, but I wasn't buying it. I reluctantly agreed to their visit, but I felt uneasy about what would happen. On the day they arrived, I noticed my dad was unusually quiet. At first, I thought maybe he had a cold or something, but it felt like there was more to it. After dinner, he unexpectedly handed me an envelope with cash inside, saying it was a gift. He insisted it was meant to help me start fresh in my new state. My mom intervened, saying I was overreacting and they just wanted to help. It felt like we were playing some sort of twisted game where they were the only players. My dad stood up and declared that they were just trying to show their love. Later that night, after they left, I discovered a message from my brother Jake about an unexpected family meeting. I was like, great, what now? He revealed that he was upset about the way my parents were treating me and wanted to discuss it. The family meeting turned out to be a confrontation about their control over our lives. My parents were shocked when they realized the extent of the conflict within the family. It's like they were living in this bubble where everything was perfect, and we were all just falling in line. This whole thing is exhausting, to say the least. I just want to move out, start my grad school, and slowly stop being the family's punching bag. Can a girl just live her own life in peace without her parents hovering over her? Edit. This past month has been intense. I had to push my move date back a week due to all the family drama. The unexpected visit from my parents and the subsequent family meeting led to ongoing conversations with my siblings about boundaries. My brother Jake has been a great support, and Kate apologized for not warning me earlier about our parents' plans. I've been talking with my sister about her own issues with our parents. I've also gotten better at asserting my independence, even though my parents are still adjusting. Overall, I'm feeling more empowered as I prepare for my new chapter. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.